That's a very good question to ask our guest right now, Dharamjot Kaur. Professor Peter Kuznick is a professor of history and director of the Nuclear Studies Institute at American University, is now joining us live in this broadcast from Washington, D.C. Big announcement by Donald Trump. He says that a ceasefire has to be installed in the next 24 hours. And like our correspondent DJ did mention there, do you think this is a premature celebration?
There's no way to know. It's good news. It's great news. It's tremendous news. If it's actually happened, the world should celebrate. But with everything about Donald Trump, you can never take anything at face value. You can never believe what he says. You certainly can't ever believe what he posts on Truth Social. But it's possible that this actually is happening. We have to remember that Iranian Foreign Minister Araghchi was in Moscow today meeting with Vladimir Putin. Russia, China, India, everybody has been hoping and pushing for diplomacy. But Trump is the one who blew up the diplomacy while it was happening, along with his partners in Israel. So if we're getting back to diplomacy instead of fighting, then that's great for everybody. Israel had largely accomplished what it wanted. The United States, Trump was able to use force, showed how strong he is, and if anything, maybe he's achieved what he said he's wanted to achieve. It's not clear, but the other alternatives are terrifying. There are so many bad possible outcomes, and there's one good outcome possibly. Let's all hope that it's the good outcome that we see.
What good outcome are you talking about, Professor? Let me just understand that aspect that you're saying. You say a good outcome and a bad outcome. Which good outcome?
The good outcome would be if Donald Trump is accurate and this war does come to an end in the next 24 hours.
But the other problem is, Professor Kuznick, there is Iran, which is willing to de-escalate. It has shown that. It has shown its willingness to negotiate and to talk about this. The other sticking point is Israel. Israel doesn't seem to back down. Do you actually think they will accept a ceasefire?
Iran has said from the beginning that it wanted to give up its nuclear program. It was willing to negotiate it away before this fighting even began. It was Donald Trump who insisted that there be zero enrichment, which the Iranians could not accept. I don't know if they're going to accept that now either. But Israel, and we don't know if Israel would accept Iran having a very limited enrichment capability. But we knew under the original Iran deal, according to the IAEA, Iran was adhering to the agreement. And the IAEA inspectors conducted hundreds of investigations and said that Iran was sticking to the agreement. In that case, the threat to Israel is zero. But now look, with Iran's proxies being so weakened, with the Houthis saying that the only reason, well, that gets the other big issue here, and that what does this mean for Gaza? Is Israel willing to stop its war against Hamas as well? Hamas never really posed a threat, in my opinion, to Israel. But to the extent it posed any threat, it was because it had the backing of Iran. Now Iran is so weakened that Hamas poses no threat, and it's possible, bizarre as it seems, given the fact that Donald Trump was just starting a war, it's possible that we could see a new era of peace more broadly in the Middle East.
All right. Interesting to say that, because as it stands right now, Iran was contemplating getting out of the non-proliferation treaty. This was a discussion that was being raised in Parliament, and there was actually a vote that was imminent. What if Iran pushes ahead with that objective of moving out of the NPT treaty. What happens to the country? What happens to their nuclear embodiments or their nuclear creation of their nuclear weapons or nuclear warheads? What happens to that?
It looks like Iran realized that that Israel is so much stronger, so much more powerful, so much more capable, that Iran has been reduced to a very weakened, hollowed out state. Israel showed it could carry out regime change. It could decapitate the leadership. It's killed the scientists. It's killed the military leaders. It's bombed at will. It has control over the Iranian sky. So I think that if Iran, if it gives in, if it accepts this agreement, it's going to mean a total capitulation, a waving the white flag. And then I don't think it's going to pull out of the NPT, which looked like it was the next step. But that was a more resistant Iran. This Iran, if this is all true, and we don't know yet if it is, but if the Ayatollahs are willing to try to preserve the Islamic State by giving up their nuclear program and by effectively capitulating, Donald Trump said he wanted complete surrender. Well, it looks like what we're getting. Before the Iranians attacked the U.S. base in Qatar, they warned the United States. They told the United States exactly what they were going to do to make sure that the missiles didn't get through and would be shot down by the Qataris or by the Americans there. So this looks like the Ayatollahs deciding, Ayatollah Khamenei and his assistants deciding that they don't have a hand to play, they don't have cards to play, that they're at the mercy of Israel and the United States. You know, that was not clearly the case when it looked like they had a lot of possible means of resistance. The Wall Street Journal on Friday published a report saying that Israel was running out of many of its missile interceptors. Many people interpreted that to mean that Iran would have a real capability of hurting Israel over the next few weeks. But this seems to be a very, very different scenario in which the Iranian leadership has decided that it is not in their interest to continue this war.
Professor, let me ask you about the Ayatollahs now, because Khamenei was living in fear for the past 1 week or so. He was actually reportedly hiding in a bunker. So what does this surrender mean for Iran and the leadership of Khamenei?
Well, he's been very badly weakened, very badly discredited. He's also not popular. He's a very repressive leader who has governed by terror, executions, repressions, killings. You know, so there's a lot of opposition, and I share that dislike of everything that he stood for. And so it's possible that the Iranian people will rise up and overthrow him. Any regime change imposed from the outside by the U.S. and Israel would have been a disaster. We've seen the history of regime change around the world. It almost never works. And this one would probably not have worked either. But if the Iranian people are fed up with this, then they have the power to overthrow a very weakened theocracy and a very weakened Revolutionary Guard that's supporting it, and possibly create a democratic, if not a democratic state, certainly maybe a secular state or a more rational state than we've seen, in a less repressive state. Clearly, the Iranian women have been badly repressed, but the Iranian society generally has suffered under Ayatollahs. So that would be a positive development.
Positive development indeed. Professor, going forward, how should the states that live in this region, the West Asia region, how should they act now going forward? Because I know they'll be cautious, they'll be very prepared for any eventualities that may occur. But how should they behave going forward now that there is a ceasefire?
I mean, we've got to rebuild that region.
Okay.
And most of the governments are very reactionary, very repressive. There's very little democracy in the region. Under Netanyahu, Israeli democracy has been severely challenged through his judicial reforms and other repressive means. So right now we've got a highly militarized region that is very, very volatile. What we need to see is a development plan that uses the resources of all the countries in the region to educate their populations, to raise standards of living, to improve housing. We've got to rebuild Gaza. We need a settlement on the West Bank that allows for a two-state solution there, living peacefully with Israel. All the countries that threaten Israel's existence have got to stop doing so, and have got to accept the Israeli state. Israel's got to become much more democratic as well. But we've got so much potential in that region. They've got to move beyond oil and gas to develop a much more modern economies than we see, because it's a very backward, repressive region. But they've got to give up war. They've been at war for almost 80 years now, on and off, and war is not the answer to anybody's problems. The downside to what we see occurring is that the world gets the message that war, that Donald Trump's military aggression and Israel's military aggression is what has led to this potentially positive development, then that sends a bad signal. That legitimizes the use of force everywhere, whether it's in Ukraine, whether it's in the Indo-Pacific, whether it's between India and Pakistan, or anywhere in the world. We need to find ways of solving problems that don't involve military means, especially in the nuclear age. I like to see the next step be the nuclear powers start moving, as they should under the NPT, to giving up their nuclear programs. Let's try to turn the negative into a positive globally.
All right, let's talk about the positives now, because I think what Donald Trump has given to the world is some positive news, at least for a break. Professor Peter Kuznick, it's great to talk to you. Thank you very much for talking to WION World is One today. I'll have to let you go at this moment.
Thanks for having me.